Interestingly enough, this topic has been presented to Ecophilia on two different occasions. Um, the first time, um, I invited Terry Harmon, and this was probably going back 25, maybe 30 years. I invited Terry Harmon to do a presentation when Ecophilia was meeting at the Kirtland Country Club. And he had been working with Brook Trout at Woody Brook and also Springbrook at the Jaga, what now is the Jaga Park District property. At the time, it was not. It was held by a large corporation, ultimately sold to a group of developers in Chardon. Jerry Peterson was one of them. Anyway, Terry had been working on that stream with his students from the university school for a number of years. And he teamed up with one of his fellow staff members, Ronnie Friebershauser, who developed one of the most sophisticated GIS systems in Ohio at that time. And Ronnie was an instructor at the university school. So Terry was telling Ronnie about the requirements that these fish needed, geologic and water-based resources. And Ronnie was working with a host of university students, university school students, to do GIS analysis of the eastern and the main stem drainages for the Chagrin River to try to identify via GIS technology suitable water and habitats for these fish. And Terry, of course, was interested in trying to propagate them and across the watershed. The second time, Terry did a presentation for Ecophilia. It was about the genetics that these fish represent. And instead of looking at me, I'm going to show you guys the subject matter. These fish, there were two strains of fish in Ohio, and they were literally just about a mile apart from each other, both going into the Bass Lake drainage. That had genetic characteristics that led to the belief at the time and presently that they were both geologic relics from the last ice age in Ohio. And interestingly enough, these genetic signatures, they tied in with the genetic profiles of fish in the Appalachians, and also in Ontario. And Professor Dansman from the University of Guelph, he was very excited to find this out because he said that basically these fish represented a missing link in the geologic puzzle of their eastern brook trout distribution across the United States and North America. So Paul is in his position with as the biologist with the Geauga Park District. He's been charged with a pretty hefty task. The Park District bought the property where the best and the native wild strain is still located. When I say the best water quality so far that we know in Ohio for these fish, because that's where they've been for maybe, hundreds and hundreds of years. And Paul has got stewardship responsibilities of that population in that stream. And recently, the Park District acquired another property. It was a golf course. It has a waterway on it that had been completely altered and modified by the golf course. And it currently is being, the plan is to restore that back to a natural waterway. And because of the Headwater Spring Stores that is right there on the property, Paul came up with the tremendous idea of trying to restore the stream as brook trout habitat. And then if the restoration is successful, introducing those fish into this waterway. And so it's a long-term ambitious project for a fish that has a long history in Ohio. The very first fish hatchery in the United States was in Ohio, and it was rearing brook trout in the greater Cleveland area. So it's really quite a legacy program. So with that, I'm going to introduce Paul, who's standing at the lecture
Steve, can I
podium.
stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
Yeah, could you ask everybody to mute themselves? Because the way this is working, anytime anybody makes a little noise, it goes to their phone rather than your phone. And then we see them rather than the screen that we need to see.
Okay.
Everybody needs to mute.
Yeah, if you heard that, that would be greatly appreciated. And mute your phones or mute your computers. And Paul, I think we'll turn it over to you, buddy.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve, for a good introduction there to the legacy of Brook Trout. My name is Paul Pira. I've been a biologist for about 30 years or so, but 20 years with the Geauga Park District, and that's a county just east of where we are at right now in Cleveland here in Cuyahoga. Thanks to Case Western for having me here. It is a nice park district. It's been around about over 60 years now. We have 29 open parks, and I manage over close to 11,000 acres of land, over 10,000 acres. And part of it has been kind of a dream of mine. Was always when I was way back in grad school. I'll talk about a little bit with my talk here, but I always wanted to work with brook trout. And I pestered and nagged my advisor, my professor, about it, and he said, "I don't know. I'm not sure we're ready for all that right now. We're gonna hold off on doing any research, but not quite to that point back then." But now I have the opportunity to be able to do quite a bit. I hope for this beautiful fish. It's been an up and down story for sure. There's a lot of history here, a lot of people involved, and it's certainly an honor to be able to talk about it today. And lots of folks. I think probably once a week, maybe a couple times a week, I get phone calls about this fish from people. A lot, of course, many kind of sportsmen and clubs like that are interested in conservation and rightly so in conservation, but I get a lot of conversations, really good ones. I've met so many nice people that are really interested in conservation regarding this fish. I've got some kind of interesting ideas, new things that we are going to be trying, and it's going to be an exciting year. We're starting here within the next month or so. I'm going to talk about that too during the talk. So with that, I'm going to just start right into it here. These fish, are so beautiful and colorful that the story I always like to say is the story of Ohio brook trout is as colorful as this wonderful fish. When we're talking about brook trout in Geauga County, this is what I'm talking about. This is the habitat that we have and that I'm stewarding and looking after. And I feel obviously a big sense of responsibility with this to keep this beautiful cold water habitat. This is spring-fed groundwater systems. I was just out here in this location actually yesterday. I have hobo loggers, temperature loggers in the stream that report temperatures twice a day, and downloaded some of that data just yesterday. And typically our August temperatures here are about 15 degrees C, and that's cold. You step in the stream with bare feet, or you put your hands in the water, after about a minute, even in July and August, you want to get out of the stream. It's that cold, and of course it harbors these little beauties here, and it's been quite an interesting story. Conservation wise, these fish are really a big subject, and the status of these fish throughout the range. They're the only native trout, or salmonid, I should say, in the eastern United States. You can see that population in Ohio there, very disjunct and isolated. And it's been a topic of concern for biologists and anyone that knows, much about ecology and things like that. We have population.
And that was one of the reasons why they, Andy White, Dr. White from John Carroll, thought that they had been stocked or introduced, but he was not taking it in the context. If you add the Ontario populations into that, then it suddenly becomes, they're actually closer to Ontario than they are as close to Ontario as they are to Pennsylvania populations.
Yeah, that's a fun story. I've had so many conversations with him about fish. If we have time, I can delve into a little bit of that story. I'm sure maybe he's shared with you, even Steve, some of his findings there. But so they were a threatened species for many years while we were running the program of reintroduction. But more recently, within the last few years, trends that I've been seeing and other biologists for the Division of Wildlife, we've been witnessing that some of the streams have kind of gone away, unfortunately, and so we've kind of bumped it up to an endangered status. I recommended that. I'm the chairman of the Ohio Brook Trout Advisory Committee, and so we meet a couple times a year, and with those discussions, we talked about raising the level of concern with this fish. But okay, I want to talk real quick because it's such a neat story. I want to talk about the history of this fish a little bit in Ohio, and especially because I'm standing here at Case Western. Couldn't be any more appropriate to talk about these guys here. I'm sure many folks have heard of Jared P. Kirtland, famous naturalist. He was a medical doctor, surgeon, and I think founder of many area, medical things in Cleveland here. Definitely, I think he started the science academies and Cleveland Museum of Natural History, I believe, was kind of some of his beginnings were there. But he came here. I mean, he wrote some of the earliest writings we have about brook trout. They called them speckled trout, and some folks still do. But he talked about in his writings in 1838 that they were only found in two Ohio streams. One that was in Ecophilia, and then another branch of the Chagrin River in Geauga County. And he had a contemporary a little later that was, and Steve was referencing him a little bit, I think, talking about breeding fish, but Theodatus Garlick, another, he was a brilliant medical doctor. He built the first camera in Cleveland, took the very first picture of Cleveland, 1841. He took the very first picture. So, but anyway, in addition to being brilliant medical doctors, they studied natural history, and they loved fish. And just down the street, up the road on Murray Hill from where we're standing, this man is buried there. You can go find his tombstone there, and it says on that tombstone he's the first man in America to breed fish by artificial means. And so that's pretty remarkable for Cleveland. I didn't know this not too long ago. I'm ashamed to say that. Kind of found this out not too long ago. I'm like, holy, are you kidding me? So this guy is right up the road in Lakeview Cemetery, and just above Murray Hill, Little Italy. Garlic, I thought that was an appropriate name, not spelled the same, but it was close. And what the heck? I had to throw that one in there. I couldn't resist. But they were both concerned about brook trout, even back then, way back in the 1850s. I think Garlic was doing a little writing and talking about maybe we should do something with these fish, and he was very much interested in breeding fish. I think actually for consumption and things like that. But still an interesting, really cool story. Can you imagine having a fish farm down here in Cleveland and raising fish down here? So let's fast forward about 100 years or so. A famous naturalist, professor, brilliant guy from Ohio State University, Milton Troutman, wrote the Bible for us fish nuts in Ohio here, the fishes of Ohio. And he wrote in there about brook trout, that he pretty much thought that most of the brook trout habitat's gone from Ohio, really wasn't around in existence. He didn't really mention any specifics about populations, but he pretty much presumed they were gone from Ohio. Now, that was until the early 70s. Andy White was kicking around in some streams. Dr. White was from John Carroll University. He was my professor there, and a great mentor of mine, and recently passed away. But so he was in some streams doing some survey work, and lo and behold, around the Bass Lake area, he came up with some brook trout in his seine. And he was questioning that for a while, and he talked to troutmen about it, and they kind of scratched their heads. They weren't really sure if these fish were native or not, if they were stocked or not. And Dr. White told me a funny story. I'll tell it real quick here. He said that he talked to, of course, when you find things like this, you start knocking on the doors in the neighborhood around. There's a little community around Bass Lake that made up of cottages. It was a vacation kind of destination in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He knocked on doors and asked about, do you know anything about these trout down in this stream? He said a lot of the folks did. But they knew they were there, but they didn't know much about how they got there. And he came upon one household and an older woman there. She said, you need to talk to Harold about that. And he said, well, where's Harold? Harold's down in Florida. He moved to Florida. Really? Okay. Well, I think this is his number. This is his daughter's number. Call the daughter. We'll get a hold. He did a bunch of investigation. He called around his daughter. Then he finally found Harold. No, not Harold. No, this isn't Harold. He moved to Texas. So then he found a number for Texas. Finally, after about a week or so, I think he said, of phone calls and investigating where in the world Harold is, he got a hold of Harold on the phone. Said, Harold, do you remember stocking trout in around Bass Lake area? The little streams there. There was a little stream that empties right into Bass Lake by the old clubhouse area or something. Yeah, I do remember that. I do remember. I stocked those fish way back before the war. I said, what war are you talking about? Harold was pretty elderly. And so, before the war, okay, well, he said, the darn thing was, Harold said this, he said, the darn thing of it was that those fish took. I said, what do you mean they never took? He said, yeah, we stock rainbows. I said, really? You stock? Why did those fish never take? Well, there's those other little fish, those other little trout were in there already. He said, godly. So light bulbs went off in Andy White's head. And hey, maybe these fish have been there for quite a while. Maybe they are native. And then, so they kind of kept that under wraps for a while, I guess. And another man from university school who Steve was talking about earlier that gave the talks, and I've been visiting with him quite regularly lately over the last year or so. A man by the name of Terry Harmon is been involved and integral to this story too. In the early 80s, I believe, he became very interested and knew about the fish as well in the stream there, and had some local students and things like that came to him and talked to him about the presence of brook trout in some of these streams. And then he decided, well, the smart thing to do would be to do some genetic testing. And so, yes, we did some genetic testing. He, as Steve was saying, took some fish up to Ontario and had some work done, and they got the phone calls. And Terry told me he remembers vividly when he got that phone call from the geneticist there. He said, are you ready? You need to come down because these fish are totally unique, and I think they're a native strain, so they're worth doing something with. And so that's how the story came about. Some of the genetic work, and we've done other work over the years on these fish. A lot of mitochondrial DNA work. There's definitely markers on there that aren't any of the markers of like hatchery raised fish. So they were definitely thought to be totally native to Ohio and unique. And there's some other really neat, more recent genetic work that's been done throughout the range of brook trout, and it does include Ohio, and certainly shows some uniqueness here. So with that, we knew that that they were unique and special to Ohio. They started in 1996 a reintroduction program. Division of Wildlife led this for about 9 years, and we surveyed a whole bunch of streams beforehand, trying to come up with, well, why don't we? Unfortunately, what happened was, and Steve knows a lot more about these older stories about a couple of streams. One stream in particular, Woody Brook, that was destroyed by development. Really, about 30 years ago or so, we were down to one stream left in Ohio, Spring Brook, that emptied into Bass Lake. That was it for these fish. So, the biologists and folks that were very concerned about this sat around and said, we need to obviously do something. Why don't we try to bolster the population? Let's find some other streams. And so they surveyed around over 200 streams. And we came up with about 14, 15 streams that we thought were suitable for introduction. The goal was to have 6 populations self-sustaining after a number of years. And so, that's pretty much the story. They did that. They raised fish. Division of Wildlife raised fish. And it's a long story. This is a whole talk, honestly, in and of itself, and lots of folks again involved with this program. But the results of it, it was at first it was pretty decent. We had about half of our streams that were kind of self-sustaining for a few years, some limited, reproduction on and off. Some of them were doing quite well. We had, about 4 that were doing really well. With large populations, self-sustaining, year after year, we'd come in there and do surveys and come up with all the age classes and years of brook trout. But the years have had impacts, and I'm going to talk about those here in a few minutes. And right now, I think we're about 3 streams. We are pretty confident that are successful, doing well, still self-sustaining. There's another one that's kind of in and out, that's doing okay. And so the question was, years ago, this was like maybe in 2004 and 5, we worked on this part of the project. I was involved with that when I came. Well, why did so well? We did a thing called habitat suitability index modeling, and tried to come up. We surveyed the streams, all of them, for substrates and water chemistry and habitat, everything there. And these folks were really involved with a lot of that. Paul Anderson from Ohio EPA. Definitely Andy Burt from Division of Wildlife, and you can see Andy White there looking at me, very puzzled. He kind of looked like that most of my career at the university there. He always had that look on his face. Questioned a lot. He always had great hard questions. But Bill Hillman was involved from Division of Wildlife, biologist, and then running fish out of District 3. And involved with brook trout. Vince LeConte, I don't have a great photo of him, but there's one of him seining there. Vince was involved quite extensively with the early beginnings of all the brook trout and the reintroduction program here. So I have to mention all these folks. And there's a number. There's so many people, honestly, that are involved. Steve's been involved, and lots and lots of people over the years with whole program. People have given money, time, donations to protect property around the brook trout streams and everything. So it's been quite an interesting and, like I said, very colorful story about these fish. And so, again, like I said, we came up with, you know, I should have put a slide in here, but with the habitat suitability modeling, and what it boils down to really water quality, of course, is temperatures. You've got to have some very cold stream temperatures, even in July and August. You don't want your temperatures going above 15, 16, 17 degrees C, which is really cold for Ohio. Occasionally, you know, and we get spikes, even in the best brook trout stream we have. We have spikes of temperatures when we have some of these hellacious rain events. We'll have temperatures that get to 19 degrees, even I think we have a 20-degree temperature day. But as long as they go back down quickly, you know, the brook trout are going to be okay. They can stand some. They're pretty tough actually too. So always remember that. Anybody saying that, you know, some of these fish are Ohio fish are different. These fish, I think they're pretty different. They've seen around Springbrook over the years, and I think they're a little different. They're probably pretty well adapted to some harsher environments over the years. So now that we're done kind of monitoring things, that's the end of that phase. They put fish in. We have about 3 streams right now that we're working on. What are the other threats, I guess? Why did some of those streams go away? And I know we know a lot of them, of course, is just basics of siltation in streams is a bad thing. You know, construction sites. I took that photo of one of the streams there. That isn't a brook trout stream, but that's just a typical stream just outside of the city of Chardon where I work. You know, if there's some construction going on or something, some development happening. Pretty typical to see when it rains. Some streams doing that. You know, muddying up, and we all know that that's not the best of things for aquatic life. Of course, we have a lot of septic issues too. Most of Geauga County is on septic. So what exactly is, again, how about that? We're going to move back to this. Is that a beautiful, we're going to talk about this beautiful Springbrook. I'm going to let you in on a crazy story that happened to me when I first started with the Park District in like 2004, 5. I got a phone call from the law enforcement guys, the ranger department at our park. They said, "Paul, you need to hurry up and get down to Springbrook, Bass Lake. We got residents there that are calling in saying that there's soap or foam or something all over the stream, the brook trout stream." I said, "What?" So, well, maybe it's just a little foam from agitation. You know, you see that in the fall, or even now you'll see it. We were fishing the other day on the Grand River, and my son asked me about the foam on the stream. You know, it's just decomposition of organic matter, protein buildup on the stream, right? Well, I drove down there, and I saw this. Mm-hmm. That's our beautiful brook trout stream, and I'm telling you, that's 6 feet. 7 feet tall suds, bizarre, and all over the trees, blowing. It was a little windy. It was blowing through the woods. There were chunks of foam flying through the woods that were the size of my pickup truck. What in the world is this? I couldn't believe it, and so I immediately followed where I knew the headwaters were up to a couple of roads. Intersections. I followed the ditches and I saw this foam in the ditch, and I came upon a rig of construction guys. They were putting in gas lines. I believe they were drilling gas lines in, and I ran up to them. I said, "What are you guys doing? We're putting in these gas lines, and damn, these things are hard to get in. There's a bunch of sandstone and everything. We can't get through." So what are you guys using? Well, we're using this stuff, drill turge. It's like a detergent wetting agent. It's a surfactant, you know. And I said, "How much of this stuff have you guys used?" "Oh, I think we used about 3 buckets of this stuff already this morning." I said, "You guys need to stop doing this because you're ruining one of the nicest streams in Ohio." "What? No, that couldn't be us all the way down there. It can't be. Somebody's doing laundry." I said, "Nobody is doing that much laundry unless they got college girls that are coming home from my They just came home the other couple weeks ago. Well, they've gone through 2 washing machines already over the past year with my wife. So we just bought a new washing machine. But I don't think that was not what was going on here. And so we definitely, they wouldn't shut down. They wouldn't listen to me. I was just from the park, some weird biologist. So I had to call the Ohio EPA and called Paul Anderson at the EPA, told him what was going on. And he raced down here and he put the shutdown on the operation for a while. And luckily we went out, we did some seining, we collected some water samples, stuff like that. And the brook trout did all right. The stream was chocolate mud for about a day. All those, all the clay material was resuspended out. And so it was muddy, but it didn't affect, we really didn't see any dead fish or anything like that. So we dodged a bullet with that one on Spring Brook. But it just goes to show, I still worry about this stream all the time. When is the next truck going to flip over and something catastrophic going to happen? These ditches all run into the spring. I've had a lot of conversations. We're trying to work on a plan to get a lot of the ditch water and all this surface water disconnected and rerouted out of the watershed of Spring Brook. That's really important. It's high on my priority list of things to do to help out. Here's another quick story. Beautiful stream, isn't it? This is a little headwater, beautiful cold water stream down in Russell area, I believe. This is what we refer to as Pettibone. Private property, self-sustaining brook trout stream for 20 years. Beautiful. Always got brook trout. We released them and then they just went to town. We had lots of good year classes here and reproduction. In 2012, that picture was taken. We've been getting, I'm sure you have noticed so many of these huge kind of, and just a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday, I think it was, we got these rainstorms that just dump inches of rain in an hour or two. And that's what happened in 2015. We had about 3 inches of rain, I believe it was, torrential rain, hail, northeast Ohio, 2, maybe 3 inches, rain fell in less than an hour, according to National Weather Service. And we went there to the stream to do our annual survey, a little over a month later. And I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. It looked like a bulldozer went through this stream, down this stream, took every bit of that habitat and just pushed it all out, moved it. And needless to say, there were no brook trout left. They were gone. 20 years of the brook trout stream gone. In one incident, there, one weather event did that. And then so I also got to walking around the stream. I don't know if you can see in that lower picture, the lower right-hand side there, you see the understory of that little forest. There's like no leaf litter, there's no duff layer, what biologists call in the forest community. There's a duff layer under those trees. There's no decomposition. There's no leaves from last year sitting there. What in the world? So I started kicking the dirt around and I found all of these invasive worms. These are Amenthus worms. If you've never seen these, they're kind of bizarre. They wiggle around and they act almost like snakes. They actually will wiggle like that and move around in the forest floor. They do really, they're not good. They're not native. They haven't been here. The glaciers wiped out earthworms from this region. And so these are all non-native alien worms that really do damage to the forest community, especially the forest floor. They compact the soils, and that soil there, I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, it's kind of hard. It's really hard, and it's almost like concrete. So with these crazy rain events we're having now, an inch or two in a couple hours, and then it's falling on a forest floor that's for all its essential purposes, a parking lot, Walmart right there, parking lot, and rushing all this hot water into the stream. So that's another death nail to this little stream. Wish I had more data on that, some kind of a study. That would be really interesting. I'm sure that's being worked on somewhere. The other thing that I do notice too a lot is with that warm water, streams warming up a little bit here now. We get competition from some of the other fishes, the warm water fishes, creek chubs in particular. This fish here, and so that's definitely on my mind. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what our plans are to limit some of this potential competition here with some of the new streams we're working on. So other things that are interesting to think about with our particular scenario in Northeast Ohio and brook trout are, and this has been a source of conversation for many years. If you can see, there's a culvert there that is Spring Brook, and that has been there for, I don't know, how long has that been there, Steve? You a long time.
40 years.
At least 40 years, 50 years maybe, I don't know. That's an old railroad above it, so who knows where that was or how that railroad went over there. Maybe there had to have been obviously something else there, a bridge or culverts or something there long ago. That's the old interurban railroad that came out from Cleveland to bring people out to vacation in Bass Lake. But so there's the conundrum of whether or not we keep these things in some of these brook trout streams. And I know the trend is, and it's a good trend, and some of my biologist friends would choke me here by saying that I actually want to keep this culvert in. A lot of the trend is to remove these things to allow natural fish passage, and that's a good thing. And removing dams is a good thing on the Cuyahoga River, especially. It's been a big theme for one of my buddies working on the Cuyahoga River. Removing all these dams and improving water quality. It's been great. But I'm kind of arguing, and we decided with the Brook Trout Committee over many years of, well, maybe we're just going to leave this thing alone. Leave this culvert pipe in, because just below that culvert is Bass Lake, about 100 yards downstream. And that stream below it is full of a lot of those competitors. There's a lot of green sunfish, creek chubs, there's all kinds of, bass, and other fish that we may not want to necessarily be getting up into Spring Brook. So there's pros and cons to having some of these things in place, and we've got to debate that and talk about it in some of the future projects that we have going. Of course, the other big thing, or just happening right now, and responsible for some of this rain that we were just talking about. What's going to happen with the climate? And of course, nobody quite knows, but I mean, these are some of the things that are predicted. We know may be happening here soon with some of our cold water habitat. We do know that the length of the low flow seasons are going to be a little longer. We're going to have some drier seasons maybe here and there. We may have, again, like we were just saying, more extreme weather, increases in these peak flows, and that's a little bit of a concern. Peak flows can be good and bad for brook trout. You don't want a lot of peak flows, heavy flows in the winter time for these brook trout streams. That's when they're vulnerable. The eggs are down in the substrates, or you just have hatch out, and these little fish are going to be pretty vulnerable to super heavy flows, and that can dictate your populations and recruitment of brook trout over the years. You have a number of these high flow events, bad storms at the wrong times, and you can really affect your brook trout populations. That affects the given year, and that's what drives brook trout populations, are your young year classes. Now, little higher flows maybe in the spring or late spring, probably not a bad thing. That not really going to affect our brook trout streams all that much. So there's good and bad maybe with some of that. All right. And we both know, and we all know, I guess I should say, that increases in stream temperatures are predicted to happen. And so that's really important, that we try to obviously protect and keep all of these cold water sources coming and discharging into our brooks here. Some of the things then, that we can do that I've been thinking about doing as far as adapting to some strategies for these cold water streams. And some of it modified from Williams there. But, warmer stream temps, obviously we're going to try to increase shading, increase cool water. So we're going to protect and restore those riparian areas. If we're doing restoration, maybe think about making some some nice deep pools, some meanders, some really, building undercut banks into all of as many areas as we can to get that cold, cool, shaded water. Here's another weird one: adding supplemental groundwater options. What that's totally thinking kind of out of the box, and I'm going to explain some of that here in a minute. More floods, more higher winter flows, kind of, okay, what do we do about that? Well, we want to increase capacity to absorb and dissipate some of that energy. So again, having these little streams reconnected, restoring our floodplains, improving, getting rid of maybe some of the ditches, of course, disconnecting all of those, any warm water stuff, getting that disconnected from the streams is going to be a good thing. Decreasing summer flows. Well, what do we do about that? Well, we want to just make sure we're keeping precipitation in the headwaters up there longer, restore our headwater riparian habitat. Again, increase numbers and sizes of our deep pools. And so with those kind of things, thinking about all that, I'm lucky, like I said, we have some wonderful restoration projects that I want to share with you now. And that's the one that we finished in not too long ago, in 2021, is Spring Brook. We did some restoration on a number of areas and funded through Ohio EPA, I have to say, with the 319 grant program. They've been great for some of these nice stream restoration projects. But again, we've already talked about it. Spring Brook is here in Geauga County, but this is the site. And I want to say we did about 800 feet of this site. Originally, I only talked about 500, but the contractor actually said, "Hey, you know what, Paul? We're going to give you a few hundred more feet." So I didn't complain about that, doing some restoration there. But the area is really significant. Even not even including the brook trout. There's also great fens, special wetlands that are around this area. We have nesting bald eagles. We have endangered lady slipper orchids and warblers that nest here, prothonotary warblers, and just a great ecological hotspot for our county. But on the stream itself, the lower part of it, just above that culvert, I watched for probably 10, 15 years erosion and instability in the stream, and it's just kept getting worse and worse. And it was doing something called head cutting, and I walked it and talked about it with a number of other biologists, a couple from EPA. We went out and yeah, this is a problem. We talked about it, and we wanted to do something. Why was it doing it? Well, the community, the Bass Lake folks, many years ago built a dam, and you can see in that lower picture, there's remnants of concrete there. They put a dam on the stream, and they used it in the summer months to divert water. There was a pipe there that's kind of, you can't see it, it's covered up. But there was a culverted pipe that ran all the way to the boathouse area on the lake itself. And they would use this beautiful cold water to flush this area out around the boathouse and the boat areas that would be really stagnant and nasty with algae and everything else, duckweed. And so they would use that occasionally to flush it and clean up the area around the lagoons, they called them. And so that set the level of the stream. This dam set the level of the stream for many years, 50 plus years. But eventually it kind of collapsed in disrepair and crumbled away, and it started head cutting. Started this quickly. The stream cut around it and started this phenomenon known as head cutting or instability in the substrates. and erosion. And so the stream was down the, like I said, this hard clay, terrible habitat for any aquatic organisms, and especially, brook trout. And we saw this happening with our survey work with our brook trout. We saw the numbers of adults going way down in our catches. So we knew something was going on here. We need to do something for the brook trout. So again, we hired a consulting group of EnviroScience, River Reach, and the GPD group to help us out with this with the grant. It was about a $219,000 grant that we spent, and we wanted to restore this 500-foot section. We wanted to stabilize it and improve anything we could do for brook trout. And beforehand, of course, we had to get the brookies out, any brook trout that were still there. And so we did some work there in 2021, right before the project itself started. 800 feet of stream, actually, maybe even a little more than that. We only had 16 adults, which is terrible. So we had a lot of juveniles, but again, that was because of the habitat. There just wasn't any pool habitat. There was very little habitat there. So we did survey work. We took them all out, electrofish. That's Kurt and actually my daughter. There's getting some fish out of the stream. We're relocating them. We had coolers, and we rushed them up above our construction site and let them go. And we put these what we call block nets up, basically just some big seines, a couple of them, try and keep fish from moving back down. And of course, what happened the very next day, we had one of those rain events, a hellacious rain event, blew out, I think, both of those nets. So I had to redo it. We had to come back. A lot of them didn't wash down completely, but we did have some come back down, and we moved them back up, put them back up, and then luckily we didn't have a whole lot after that. But anyway, so then we wanted to bring in, we had to go through a lot of hoops as far as this is a state nature preserve, and folks at the DNR were pretty concerned about my plans for bringing heavy equipment into a brook trout stream and a nature preserve. So we had to have meetings and talk about a lot of things on site, get permitting done. But after that, we brought in a lot of material. And I definitely insisted on bringing in natural native stone from just around the corner. There's a quarry just outside Chardon, and they donated actually all of this stone. That's a lot of stone, sandstone and quartz, those little tiny quartz. You can see the white quartz there. So important, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also brought in a lot of woody material there too. 2021, yep, that was when we staged everything and started the project. And we had some really neat equipment. This was River Reach in there. Had some really cool little tracked equipment that could literally, that little dump truck kind of piece of equipment there that could spin around 360 degrees, so you didn't actually, the whole thing spun, that the tracks did not spin, so you could just kind of pull in and pull out. So it never tore up the ground really bad at all. And it was quite amazing to watch these guys work. They're kind of artists in what they do. And these guys are actually working on a project right now for us, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the goal was to actually do something called a grading, so bringing the stream up again, building it back up. And we did that with bringing in, like I said, all of that material in about 8 key spots. We built up riffles. The riffles are kind of the stable areas that dictate much of the stability of the stream. And so we did that and keyed them in. We went subgrade, below grade with a lot of stone and rock that you don't see, and kind of keyed it in so the stream would not go around and flank it. And so it's been working well. I go out, every few weeks to take a look at this stream, and I've been really happy. I have not seen any issues like, cutting or going around our structures or anything. Here's some before and after with the raised, stabilized stream bed. Definitely can tell how much that stream came up. So pretty cool pictures. Here's another pre-post comparison. That hole, we used to get lots of brook trout out of there all the time. Nice big adults, and it was pretty pathetic last time we went before the restoration. I don't think we got anything out of that hole there. Newly installed riffles, great brook trout food area, young year habitat. Couldn't be more happy with that. They're good stuff. Interesting to watch the macroinvertebrate community come back after this. It was pretty cool. This was a whole study that I wish somebody would have. I mean, we did some work. EnviroScience did some macroinvertebrate work on it, but pretty neat to watch how and what species came back. You know, and how long it took after this to recolonize and you know, obviously come down and just drifted down from above. But neat stuff to study. Did a lot of woody debris and brush layering, stabilizing, and making some of these big undercut, you know, refuge for our brook trout. I'm really happy with that. And of course, when we raised the stream bed up, we also made some big deep pools, a couple feet, 2-3 feet now. Some of these pools are. That's where all the big adult brook trout are hanging out. Yeah, and then so we got the other thing that I insisted on, of course, was, you know, you have to. One of the things we learned with the habitat suitability work was obviously you need lots of good spawning substrate and habitat in there, and so something called red habitat, these little fine gravels, the quartz at the tail ends of pools where the ripple starts, where that upwelling occurs of groundwater and water. In the stream, that's really critical. So that's where these trout are going to be spawning, and so we added a lot of that, and I'm really happy with that, the way it was looking. And I had a local guy in the neighborhood that was obsessed with the brook trout too, and keeping tabs on it and letting me know, you know, when these brook trout. I don't know, we didn't talk about it, but brookies spawn in the fall. They're kind of an anomaly with as far as fishes go. Most fishes in Ohio spawn in the springtime and early summer. These guys spawn in October around here. And I'm going to see if we can get this little video to work. If we do, it'll be great. This is some spawning brook trout in Springbrook.
Maybe.
Maybe it worked yesterday. All right. I don't know why this. Huh. Okay. Darn it. That's just a great video of a couple of adult brookies spawning over some substrate that we have there in a stream. Really cool video, but maybe another day I'll bring my videos. We can do it again. All right. So post-restoration stuff, we did have a really nice increase. I want to say, well, I know we did. So we came in a year later, and we got well over 100 adult brook trout in that same stretch where we only had 16 brookies. So a good improvement as far as the adults go. The younger year we're down a little bit, but I think that's just in relation to because it was such a new stream. They hadn't done much spawning yet. I'm looking forward to, in about a month, we're going to be sampling again. So I'll have some new data on that. All right, my last project I want to talk about with you folks is the newest one, and we are gearing up. Actually, this coming Monday, we're having our pre-construction on-site meeting, so we're just about there. We've already started much of it. We're just about, like I said, yeah, in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to actually be doing construction on this exciting project outside of just south of Chardon, about 15 minutes on Route 44. It's an old golf course. It was called the Wicked Woods Golf Course. And we renamed it. And one of the cool things at the Park District, they send me out to look at new pieces of property for potential acquisition and whether or not it's worth having, pursuing. grant money or just buying outright for the park to turn into a new park. And so the director said, Paul, go on out and look at this old golf course. We already had one that we restored. And I said, okay, I'll go take a look. And so the owners took me out on a golf cart and showed me around, and kind of the typical stuff you see here. I wasn't super impressed. I was like, yeah, okay. Some old fairways, yeah, golf cart paths, some nasty looking ponds there. They got a lot of algae and some not so hot looking culverts and drainages. And but then he said, Paul, you know what? How about we go up to the north of the golf course? There's one last place I want to show you. And he showed me this. I said, holy mackerel, that is a beautiful little cold water stream. I started digging around in it too, and I found these things. These are red salamanders, and these are really great indicators of sustained cold water habitat. And I knew, I said, holy mackerel, that definitely is something pretty special to have here. And of course, light bulbs went off in my head. What do you think I started thinking about? Of course, I started thinking about brook trout. And man, was there some way we could do something with brook trout on this stream? And unfortunately, so the spring comes out of a beautiful seep area and it empties into this little pond. And I think I have some pictures I'll show you. Empties into this little pond, and then it goes through a little outlet and into this little creek right here. And then unfortunately, it meets up with another warm water stream and a ditch and everything. And it quickly is ruined. The temperatures kind of go up, and it hits a couple ponds, those nasty looking ponds, and it's ruined. The cold water habitat's ruined, and you can see that. So I just kind of pulled my hair out for a week or so, trying to think of how to make it work where we could reconfigure the stream or do something with it to keep the cold water cold and just separate it all. And I couldn't figure out. Then I'm like, well, what if I just disconnected it totally? What if we just dug a new stream channel, built a whole new stream? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I called up a few of my other friends that know a lot more about this than I do. They said, I don't know. All right, that's a new one. That's weird. You come up with some strange ideas, Paul. I guess it might work. We could try. We're gonna, I don't know, see what you can come up with. Talk to other people, and it has been done. It's been done. They constructed a trout stream. I want to say Kentucky. There's one. If you look, there's a YouTube video. I found one video on this. And so I tried to sell this to the funders, the Ohio EPA. I tried to sell it to them once, and they said, I don't know about this idea, Paul. You need to get some more data. Take some temperatures, get some flow measurements, get flows from your other trout streams, and come back to us next year. We're not totally convinced about this. So I did that, and the next year I reapplied for a large grant called the WRRSP grant through Ohio EPA. And I talked, meeting after meeting, and I finally kind of convinced him to give me over $1 million for this project. And I like my job a lot. I kind of hope it works. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I think it's going to work. We have, again, this great consulting team. We got engineers that have designed it all, and we're going to put in about 1,700 linear feet of cold water stream. And again, it's going to start in about a month. We're removing a couple of ponds. We're going to restore some of that warm water stream as well, work on some wetlands, and we're removing a bunch of the impervious surface, all the cart paths from there. And this is just a little more detailed. This is the engineering, some of the drawings. We've got a stack of drawings of 100 pages or so of this work, and really cool. Up at the top there, if you can see it up there, you can see my cursor. No, probably not. Okay, but at the top there is where that spring comes out. And this is, again, here's here's that pond area where the stream, the spring starts. And we thought about this too for a while, and we came up with an interesting concept here too. And I don't know how many of you are trout fishermen or folks that do some fishing. I remember being in, especially in Pennsylvania, in some of the trout streams over there, some beautiful. I did some survey work for the Natural History Museum on a couple of streams, and some of the headwaters of those streams, they had these in them, some beaver ponds, and that was really neat. And there were big brook trout swimming around in these beaver ponds. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that is the coolest thing. What if we could do something back here? And so, yeah, we're going to do that. We are going to try to mimic, I guess, for a better word, beaver pond mimic. We're going to build up this pond a little bit. We're going to create a little higher berm, and we're going to have a natural outlet from the stream, or for the stream, I should say, right here. And there's going to be a natural outlet. We're also going to have an agri-drain structure, like a drainage structure that I can manipulate, I can control when I want, maybe to simulate some higher flow events. There is no watershed for this. I mean, there is a watershed, but it's all groundwater. There's no surface water going to be getting into this new stream. So we talked about, we had a lot of discussions again too, like, well, natural streams have these high water events where it does good things, like it flushes a lot of the fines out of streams, the sediments, silts, if that accumulates. So we built in some of those kind of things, like I can simulate a high water flow event with an agri-drain. I open that up for a day and flush some of those. If I see some of the fines accumulating too much in the stream, we can mimic some of that and try and work on things like that management wise. So that's some of the unique things. One unique characteristic about this project, definitely. Another thing is that, and I don't think it's on this drawing, is we are going to drill a well. We're going to put a well in too. And there was, groundwater fluctuates, and the flows definitely fluctuate a little bit on this seep. Not to the point where I'm super concerned, but we thought, we're here, we're doing all this construction. Why not add a couple more tools in our toolbox? If things change in 20 years, 30 years from now, who knows what's going to happen with flows? Why don't we have a well there just in case? And we're going to have it, and it's going to be situated just north of this pond, about 50 yards. And it's going to be solar powered, 150 feet deep. And we can turn it on and off whenever we want. We can add to the pond. It's going to empty into the pond, cold water, groundwater. And so if we think things are getting low in August, we have a drought year, something that we're a little concerned about, we can add more water if we want to the pond and continue that and ensure that our brookies are going to be okay. So that's another unique thing that we had to jump through hoops with and actually do a little convincing of Ohio EPA folks, and they're on board with this project now too, with that component. We're going to add a bunch of great, obviously lots and lots of pools. I want to say we're doing like 35, 40 pools in this stretch of stream, lots of trees and undercut banks. We're removing, we already started this, we've already removed over 7,000 feet of asphalt carpet. Can you imagine that? How much, we had discussions about that. Well, how much is that going to be? What's it going to look like? But that's kind of what it looks like. There's even more piled than that. It's even bigger, and that some of it's been removed. That's a lot of asphalt, and luckily they didn't show up. The construction team didn't show up with that little truck there to move it. That's actually part of invasive plant work that they're doing on site. But removing those pervious surfaces, look at already, this is where cart path was, and it's already coming back. These fairways are really responding nicely. So pretty happy about that. So this is the site just a couple days ago. That is where you can see some blue flags there. If you look real hard, that's the stream. That's the center of stream. We're going to have that stream go in and out of that area around those trees. We're going to try to keep all those big trees as much as possible. And so that's what's coming for us. We're really excited about it, again, in about a month. And I should have, by this time next year, some crazy pictures of a new stream right there where that old cart path is. So we don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, you know, what's the future of native Ohio brook trout? I don't know. I mean, in 50 years, I kind of would be foolish to stand here and say, I know this is what's going to happen for our brook trout. The only thing that I do know is things are going to be different, right? So, of course, you know, Heraclitus said it best here. I like that quote. You know, things are going to be different in years to come. And so I think as stewards, I think we really need to start thinking creatively about what we're doing. I manage land all the time. Over 10,000 acres, like I said, almost 11,000 acres land. I'm managing meadow. And Steve and I talked about this. He actually can turn me on to this. Like, hey, what's the difference, honestly, between managing a prairie for invasive plants? I burn it all the time. I'm constantly doing management on it, and managing a cold water stream. I mean, you're going to have to think about active management, and do we want to keep these kind of things around for the future? And so the future of Ohio brook trout, I am happy to say, I'm working on this, and we're almost done. This is, Steve, we're going to have this ready in about a month for digestion or going over from folks. We're going to have a trout summit again, and I'm writing tomorrow. Actually, I've got another meeting about it, but the head honchos and folks at the Division of Wildlife, Scott Hales, are already gone over this with me. The conservation plan for brook trout in Ohio. And so it's going to be full of updates. We've got some clear objectives, some goals for the next 10 years on this species. What are we going to do about them, about these fish? And so we really hope to have some good, engaging conversations here in the next month or so with lots of stakeholders. Things that we obviously have learned just from working on brook trout. Watershed scale, healthy, you know, the streams that are doing well right now are all protected streams. All the watershed, 100% protected by by conservation easements and/or the park districts themselves here. You know, diverse teams. Brook trout are great at leveraging, you know, efforts, I think, to talk about other cold water. There's other cold water species too that I really love. Other ideas, you know, here again, some other big lists of, you know, strategic land acquisitions are really key. I know of another stream right now that's beautiful cold water gushing out of the ground that, you know, is, from what I know, I know it's privately owned, but it's unprotected. Like, we need to do something about that beautiful resource. You know, again, think about innovative conservation habitat work. I've talked with Terry Harmon about like egg boxes and doing things like that in streams to kind of bolster populations. Translocations. Why not start moving some of these fish a little bit around in some of these streams above some of the barriers? One of our streams, the leach stream, is only 100 feet, 100, or I should say, 500 feet long of stream. That's it. Self-sustained for over 20 years. But there's in that picture, no, that picture isn't it? But there's a big waterfall area, and above it, I was walking a couple of years ago, looking at a piece of property for the park. Above it, and we bought it to protect it. But above there's thousands of feet of cold water stream. Like, why in the world did we never take the brook trout up above that waterfall and put them all in that? And so we started a little bit of that too. And so, you know, a lot of outreach, talking with partners. Again, we know positives for our brook trout, and this basically my last slide here. We know some islands are pretty good at local adaptation, so that the brookies have that going for them. Again, anyone used to tell me, oh yeah, these Ohio brook trout are different. They've seen a lot. I think they may hang around for a while. They may surprise us. And so I do want to, you know, be positive about that. and I really feel strongly that, you know, we need to work on these things. Again, you know, why not try and build some of these areas, new areas of refuge for brook trout, and increase some of our chances here. I don't really know, again, what's in store for our brookies, and I'd love to get this video to work. Who knows? I don't know if it's going to work. Probably not if the other one didn't work. But I had another great video of a beautiful brook trout swimming, a native brookie swimming in our stream, Leech Creek. But I want to leave this potential, you know, to this kind of. I want my kids.
Okay.
Son, my oldest son is obsessed all of a sudden with fish, so he's just turned on to fish. We've been fishing, and I wanted him to be able to come out and see a wild brook trout in a jug stream in the future. I want his grandkids to be able to come out. So definitely, I take it seriously. You betcha that I want these fish around for another 100 years or more. But with that, I will take any questions you guys have, and thanks a lot for having me. You know, long, but you know, just about we could keep going for another hour. Appreciate it, and I'll take any questions.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to? Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, thanks for that fascinating update, and I wish you every success in reintroducing this fish. I have 4 brook trout tall tails that I would like you to either verify or discredit. One of them is that many years ago, brook trout living specimens were exported to Europe because even though they're small, they're very tasty, and they were stocked in streams there. And in contrast to Ohio, they did so well that they've actually become an invasive species, a threat to their own species. Have you heard that or read that anywhere?
Oh yeah. Brookies. It's kind of funny because we're very concerned about them hanging on here and surviving. They're endangered. We're working like crazy to keep them out western United States, west of the Mississippi. I mean, they're invasive species out there. So yeah, there's a lot of active management even in the United States here to get rid of brook trout.
So no danger of extinction then. Second one, the great nature writer, John Burroughs, brook trout were his passion as a fisherman and also eating. And this was, of course, he was fishing in the Catskills a century ago. And as he started to travel and catch other species of trout, he said they're never as good as a brook trout. And the reason I'm told is that they're not that closely related to trout. They're more closely related to another northern fish called the Arctic char. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, that's correct. Yeah, that's technically, scientifically, they're actually not a trout; they're a char. So you're right with that. But as far as tasty, I couldn't tell you that. If our Arctic char, did you ever have an Arctic char?
Yes, they're delicious.
I've never had those. Yeah, brook trout are supposed to be just delicious. I know they are. Yeah. I've never had Ohio brook trout.
The third one is years ago, I led a group from Cleveland State, and they were zoology students. I'm a guide at the Holden Arboretum, and the professor was with them. And we entered Stebbins Run that runs through Stebbins Gulch and worked our way downstream all the way to where it runs into the East Branch Chagrin River, which was no doubt on private property, which was my bad as the guide. But while we were seining, we caught this incredibly beautiful little fish. And I'm a fisherman. I fish live bait all my life. I've hung out in bait stores all my life. I've never saw anything like it. It was off a tropical reef. She said it was a brook trout. So is Stebbins Run one of the streams you tried to stock? Or, you know, they're probably not there anymore. But are you aware that they were in that body of water?
Dick Munson. I don't know, Pat, if you remember Dick Munson. He was the director of the Arboretum for a number of years.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, and when he was an intern in college, Dick maintains that he caught brook trout in Stebbins Gulch and
Wow.
that was in the late 60s.
Mhm.
Amazing.
That doesn't surprise me to hear something like that. Yeah, I mean, the East Branch, a lot of those trips certainly held brook trout. And I do know, I mean, we did stock brookies in the Holden Arboretum in a different
Baldwin,
stream.
Baldwin, yeah.
So who knows, definitely these fish will move, seasonally, at the right times of year, high water events, things like that. They move around. So
Okay, what
it's
was your
very possible.
yeah? What was your fourth one, Pat?
Final question is, I live across the street from Pete McDonald's farm, right about half a mile down from Bass Lake. And he's, of course, is the in charge of the Chagrin River for the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And there used to be a drainage ditch running off his farm straight into Bass Lake. And it took a couple of years. They've turned it into a beautiful meandering stream with all sorts of. Were you aware of that project? Did it have anything to do with brook trout?
Yeah, I'm the guy that did the project. Yeah, I know all about it. So that was another WRSP project that we had right on Sherman Road there. It's a tributary, it's called Beaver Creek, that runs into Bass Lake. And we restored like 1,200 feet. It was a channelized ditch going into Bass Lake for probably 100 years. And so we did very similar. We kind of graded that. We raised it. We allowed it to access the floodplain. We restored all the wetlands around the stream. And it's a great project. But no, unfortunately, people tried to ask. They were really interested in new brook trout were in the area. But it's just not brook trout habitat. That's a totally different. That's a low gradient, more of an open marsh kind of system. Not really totally suitable, and it's definitely not cold water habitat right there. So I wish it could have been something with brook trout, but that stream, more of the headwaters of Beaver Creek are designated cold water habitat. So there may be some possibilities way upstream on that creek, but I haven't. I've seen some of it, but most of it didn't look suitable. So
Yeah, just as an aside, I am holding this whole presentation part of Low Tech and Proud. That's our sub slogan here. I've been videotaping this presentation on my iPhone. I may lose the battery at any time here. So if we just suddenly go blank, that's what's happened. Thank you so much for watching, though. Do we have any other questions? Darren?
I'm just sort of interested in the basic biology of these. I never knew much about them. You talked about macroinvertebrates back. Is that primarily what they're feeding on?
Oh yeah. I mean, these are definitely. I mean, they'll eat just about anything in a stream. That they're pretty voracious predators, and the best brook trout streams are the ones that have only brook trout in for the most part. But yeah, they're highly insectivorous. Mayflies, caddisflies. They'll eat each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you, folks. From this was recorded. It should be available on the Ecophilia Ohio website here in a matter of days if Rich Benz is successful and if I get the download and we're successful in getting it posted up. So thanks very much. Got another presentation coming up next month, of course. And so thanks a lot. Thank you, Paul, and good luck with your project. And we'll see you next time, folks.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
If you bring my hat tonight, I'll bring the return of your book.
I'll see if I can find your hat, Dan. It's around the house somewhere, and great little sidebar conversation. We'll see y'all later.
Right. Take care. Hickory Rockers tonight at Concord Township.
Yeah. Shameless self-promotion, Dan. Thank you.
Bye.